And then the last pro tip is making sure that when you mute everybody, both Kevin and Trisha, you won't be muted automatically because of your role. But I would encourage Kevin to mute your mic because then since Trisha's the only one talking, she'll be displayed when she shares her screen.
Yep.
So Trisha, I'm going to go ahead and make you the host. And then if you have any questions, I'll stick around for a minute and
Okay.
then I skedaddle.
Kevin, are you all good?
I'm all good.
Okay.
Even though your links won't come across as links, I'm still going to paste them in there so people can copy and paste if needed.
Perfect.
Do you want me to start with that bit.ly?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Yeah, what does your bit.ly link go to, Trisha?
It goes to an answer garden.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's still morning, right?
It is. I
Sure.
just asked David the same thing.
Yeah.
How's your morning so far?
So far, so good. It's been fun. The sessions have gone very well, and the people attending are amazing. I see all of you down there. Slowly, the numbers climbing. We thought, when we originally had this idea, we thought, well, if we get like 15, 20 people, that'd be pretty cool. And and you're gonna have more than that.
Your people showed up.
That's right. Well, it's a good service that we're able to offer all of our colleagues across the state, and so that's pretty fun.
And across the country.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm gonna go monitor this stuff over here now, but you all have a great session.
Thanks. So if you're just joining the room, there is a bit.ly at the bottom. If you want to put in where you are from, that's going to lead you to an answer garden, which is a great tool that you can create word clouds on by audience or student participation. Okay, should we get started, Kevin? Are you ready? Okay, so welcome to our session, points positive versus penalizing during the pandemic, and also authentic assessment. If you notice, there's a bit.ly at the bottom of our first slide. If you want to throw in that bit.ly where you're from, it takes you to an answer garden, which is a great tool to use with students or with staff just to create word clouds based on answers that are provided. Just a few notes. We want to thank you for coming today. This has turned out to be a great day of learning. As a reminder, the session will be recorded, so if you need to pop out or you have any technical issues, you can watch it after a while. Kevin, our technology integrationist at Kennedy High School in Bloomington, Minnesota, is going to be moderating today. So if you can keep your mics muted and use that chat feature, he will be checking that for any questions in both the YouTube Live and in the Zoom conference room. So I am Trisha Meyer. I have taught for the past 15 years. I started my teaching career in Arizona and taught there for 10 years, and then have been in Minnesota in Bloomington for the past 5 years. Part of my day is spent as the AVID coordinator and an AVID teacher, and also I teach English, mostly freshmen at this point. I teach at Kennedy High School in Bloomington, like I said, and I'm excited to see where all of you are from. One of the things that I like to do with PD, as we were talking about creating this session, is really make it interactive. So there are going to be a few pieces, whether you're in Zoom or whether you are in YouTube Live, that you can participate in, and we really encourage you to participate in. So the first thing that we're going to start with is you're going to go to a Mentimeter website. On the bottom, there is a link, menti.com, and it's going to ask you when you get there to put in the code 139454. And we want you to give us your answer as a teacher or as an educator. What is the most important thing you can provide for your students during pandemic distance learning? So we'll give you a minute or so to get to that website, put in that code, and you can give a couple different responses. And as you're noticing, I believe this shows up on your screen as well. But you can take a look at the responses that you're giving, as well as the other participants are providing. If you've never used this website before, it's a great resource. We'll use it a couple times today so that you have an opportunity to participate and kind of give some feedback as well. There are a couple different options of how you can get students to give responses. This obviously is creating a word cloud for us. After a while, you'll be ranking a couple different items for me, but a really easy teacher tool to use. So it looks like the majority of you are seeing and sharing that the main thing that all of our students need during this time is connection, support, encouragement, that social emotional learning piece of it. So as we're moving into kind of the first piece of the presentation, keeping that in mind, that really has a lot to do with how we focus on our gradebook and what we are doing with our students during this time. During this time, as we're looking at what school is and what we're providing for our students, we have to think about what our students got when we were in our actual classrooms. I know that as a ninth grade teacher and as an AVID teacher, a lot of the students thrived in school because of the fact that they were able to socialize and collaborate. They had their teachers there available to them to either redirect them or just give them motivation. And for some of our students, it really was a time for them to escape from the realities of what they dealt with outside of the school day. Taking a look at what our students are currently experiencing in school with the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of them, as I'm checking in with them each week, we have a weekly form that our students fill out. They're really feeling that isolation. All they're doing is interacting with screens. A lot of their communication, even though some of them may be using Google Meets and things like that, a lot of the communication is through email. And then as school was that ability to escape in the past, now they're finding that they're not able to escape, that inability to escape what's actually going on at home. So taking a look at that before we jump into what a points positive gradebook is, when you go back to that same Mentimeter, if you I would like you to please rank who grades are most useful for. So when we're looking at our gradebook, who's getting the most use out of that? Who's able to take that information and do something with it? So you should, if you go back to Menti and put in that code, or if you still had up that tab, you should be able to rank your opinion. We'll give people 1 second, 1 minute to kind of put that information in there. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to put those in the chat, and Kevin's watching both the YouTube chat and the Zoom chat, and he'll share those out with us. So it looks like the ranking is slowing down a little bit at this point. For those of you that are still looking at the screen, it looks like we feel that grades are most important for teachers, and then parents, and then students, school, and then the district. So as we're taking a look at our first piece that you shared, and the idea that we as teachers need to support our students through connection and support and encouragement, nowhere in this word cloud, from what I can see from the top words that are in there, did I see anything about grades or letting the kids focus on the grades that they're receiving, which is really the backbone of kind of the points positive gradebook that we're going to look at today. So our traditional gradebook, if we're in that classroom and we're able to encourage those students face to face, normally for that, students go into the gradebook, they can see what they're missing, they can see what they're not missing. In our gradebook with Infinite Campus, if I put items in as missing, it automatically calculates it as a 0. As a teacher, I can then go back and connect with my students and say, hey, you missed out on that vision board, please make sure you get that turned in. Whereas currently during this time, not as easy to do that with the students. With a traditional gradebook, when we're not in what we're calling in our district emergency school, I as a teacher can easily redirect the students when they're working, or catch them if they misunderstood directions or instruction. If we're using that traditional gradebook and we're keeping that idea of putting in missings or zeros for every assignment that students aren't doing, the minute that they log into the gradebook, many of them are seeing failing grades and kind of a hole that makes it really difficult for them to dig themselves out of. One of the pieces that we look at with that points positive gradebook is being able to motivate my students. I can't be there at the desk next to them motivating them, so I really have to find other ways to do that. As I'm looking at the points positive gradebook, what that means is that I'm only putting in student work that has been completed. I'm leaving those blanks for assignments that have not been turned in or haven't been completed, or maybe they hit that submit button thinking that if they didn't actually do the work that they would get the points anyway, and really focusing on the points that students are earning based on what they've completed and what they've shown me that they know how to do. If I'm not penalizing students for work that they haven't completed. I am really focusing on what they are sharing that they do know and they have mastered at that point. This also gives them the opportunity as they log into the gradebook, possibly if it is after a week of not logging into distance learning, they have that ability to kind of see what they're missing, but they also have that moment where they can see what they have accomplished, and they're not focused by or focused on those red missing zeros at that point. So kind of reasons on why you would adopt a points positive gradebook. There's kind of 3 reasons that I've found that with my colleagues that we've talked about a little bit. Really that motivation piece, if students know that they're able to be successful on something, they're more likely to log in and show up to do the work. It's a time for celebration. Really looking at that points positive gradebook, they can see what they've accomplished already versus being burdened by those things that maybe they haven't accomplished. And then also, students are more likely to work on new assignments and jump back into the classroom or classwork if they have been gone for a while. We know a lot of our students, I've gotten emails from students that said, I'm working more hours, my family's moving, so I don't have time to actually do the work because we're packing up our stuff and moving to a different house at this point. Or a lot of the high school students for us are helping with childcare in their family. They're helping younger brothers or sisters get their homework done, or just helping their parents kind of maintain that piece of the home. So those are kind of the 3 main reasons on why during distance learning, I've moved into that points positive gradebook. So a couple of comments or questions that I've had from colleagues are the fact that they say, but my students are motivated by those missings or those zeros. The minute that they see that and that pops up as a notification, they get in there and they do that work. This was something within the first 2 weeks of distance learning that I kind of grappled with a little bit, trying to figure out how to find that balance. I found that if I put the missings in and students are doing the work, great. If it's been a week and maybe they've had some moment in their life where they've been moving or they had something happen within their family where school wasn't the first priority, I then go back out and take out those missings or exempt that work. And then one of the things that we've done as a staff, and one of my colleagues had shared, is that if in the gradebook, maybe it doesn't have that M or that 0 in there, but I leave a link to the assignment for where they can find it, so that when they do come back, if they're trying to work through some of that missing work that they do have, they're able to quickly find it. So it takes away that barrier of, I didn't even know where to go to do the assignment. The second piece is, if they don't do that beginning work, they can't continue to do the work right now. We hear this a lot with math and science, especially. One of the kind of key pieces of that at that point is looking at putting tips at the top of your assignment. So instead of reminding them that they haven't been there for a week and they have a ton of missing work, meet them at the door. Give them what they need in order to be successful with that assignment. So I know that's been a lot of information at this point. I'm new to Zoom, and this is going to be something that we're going to attempt. If you are currently in the Zoom session, it looks like there's about 173 of you at this point. We're going to try and break you out into breakout rooms where you can have a conversation with some of the other people in the session right now. You're going to have about 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes for your conversation by the time you get in there. Have some time to chat, and then also I'll give you kind of a minute warning before we come back together. You're going to focus on if you currently use a points positive gradebook, and would you consider it or see it being a benefit during distance learning, or maybe even not distance learning when we eventually get out on the other side of this. So the hope is that this is going to go smoothly. So if you can give me 2 seconds, you should soon be able to break out into different sessions. So if you are currently still in our main Zoom session, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat area. We will figure out how to unmute everybody.
Hey, Trisha, I just wanted to pop in.
Yeah. Oops. Sorry, I think I forced you into a room as you were.
Hey, Trisha, I just wanted to pop in.
Yeah.
No, voice off. Hey, Trisha, how's it going?
Good.
Sorry,
How are you?
I've got an extra helper.
That's okay.
How did the breakouts go so far?
Good. We just popped everyone into their rooms, so.
Hi,
Sorry,
my thing froze, so I had to end it and rejoin. Can you throw me in a
pop you
group?
back into a room? Sure. I don't know that you'll end up in the same room, but we'll get you in one.
Can you get me in a room too?
Yep.
Hey, Trisha, how's it going?
Good. How are
Sorry,
you?
I've got an extra helper.
That's okay.
How did the breakouts go so far?
Good.
We'll have so much fun golfing.
So if you are in our main room, we have about 3 more minutes until everybody comes back. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. So as you are all coming back, if there were any comments or questions that you had that you wanted to share with the entire group, that would be great if you could throw them in that chat area. And Kevin is going to kind of look through them and share out any major.
The wrong way too.
These. That's cool. Oops.
You wanted to share with the entire group. Throw them in that chat.
My purse. I thought Corey gave them to me.
I think one thing we were talking about is just the different things that are going on in students' lives right now, and just how to be very mindful of the kids and what they are going through, and to make sure we're, giving them some grace in all of this as well.
Definitely. So I don't know if any of you have participated in Zoom breakout rooms before, but that was definitely something new that we wanted to try. So I hope it gave you a chance to talk a little bit with others that are here. We're just making sure that Kevin's still on as co-host.
Yeah, and if we could have people mute their microphones now, that'd be fantastic while we get this started up again. I think we're good, Trisha.
Okay, perfect. Any questions that came across, Kevin, that you need me to answer?
I'm going to check with YouTube Live here real quick. Looks like a lot of good discussion going on, but I don't see any questions standing out. If anybody wants to post questions, comments, thoughts, right now would be a great time.
So as we're just kind of wrapping up this section, points positive gradebook is definitely something that I did not do pre-distance learning. It is something that I've kind of started doing as distance learning took effect, and I found that it really gives students a chance to jump in whenever distance learning is accessible for them. So kind of depending on your district and depending on your school, we have a lot of students that are free and reduced lunch. So education and school and distance learning aren't always necessarily first on their plate of importance and top priorities. So I think that points positive gradebook really gives them that opportunity to show what they know and what they can do in this time of uncertain education, honestly.
Trisha, we got a question from Jean saying, I understand making accommodations for kids with issues, shortening assignments, eliminating assignments, etc. As a math teacher, it's hard to leave a lot of assignments blank. How do we hold our kids accountable for learning?
So one of the things that I'm doing is, obviously my students who are logging in on a daily basis, I'm putting in those missings, I'm putting in those zeros for them. Like I said, at the beginning of distance learning, I was putting them in for everybody until I could kind of field and feel out who was having troubles accessing distance learning and being able to do that work. In that case, I'm kind of reaching out to those individual students, either through email or through counselor contacts, or even checking with their other teachers to see if they're logging in and doing the work, and kind of playing it piece by piece. I think distance learning is really, without having anyone say it outright, you're creating 504 plans for almost every single one of your students, seeing what they need and seeing kind of what they can do and working with them to make sure that they're successful and that they feel successful.
Another question came from Douglas. Do you plan to continue using points positive or gamification post distance learning?
I think so. to some extent, I think there's that happy medium. I think there's a little bit more accountability when kids are obviously in the classroom in front of you. Whereas you can check in with them a little bit more frequently and kind of see where they're at. And then there's that piece of, if I put in those missings, it still motivates some of those kids. So I think really reaching the kids where they're at and where they're walking in the door makes a big difference. So we have about half of the time left, a little less than half of the time left. Kind of transitioning into that next piece. So now that we've taken a look at what we're putting into our gradebook, really making sure that those assessments that are going in there and those assignments that are going in there are authentic and are showing and letting our students show what they know, and kind of doing it in a way that is both beneficial to you and to your students. A lot of conversation has come up with colleagues about they're worried about students cheating on their test. And as we're looking at assessments, the question is at that point is your authentic assessment, or are you really just doing that skill and drill memorization type assessment? And by no means is there anything wrong with making sure that your students know vocabulary words or remember dates or know those important people that you're talking about. But if you're only getting to that level in assessment, I'm not sure that we're really tapping into everything that our students know. So what makes an authentic assessment is not only measuring what students know about the content, but also their ability to apply it. So as an avid teacher for probably the last 13 out of the 15 years of my teaching, we teach our students about Costa's levels of questioning. Those level 1 questions, basic, I can go find them in the book. That's probably not going to be your authentic assessment focus. Whereas the level 2 and level 3, really making them do something with that information is where you're getting those authentic assessment activities from. So what can they do with it? How can they apply it? How can they make it relevant to their own life? So kind of keeping it simple, the ABCs of authentic assessment, this is something that I just think is really easy to remember, as well as it kind of breaks it down and makes authentic assessment a little bit more easy to understand. Assessments don't have to be difficult or complex. You don't need an assessment or a project that is multiple pages long of instructions. It can be something quick and easy where students can still show what they know and what they've learned. Especially for distance learning, really breaking those assessment tasks into manageable parts for the students is helpful, especially if they're not logging in every day. If they do log in partway through a project, a lot of times students don't know where to start. Taking a look at possibly having more mini assessments instead of one end of the unit assessment like we maybe would normally do in a school setting. Can you test them on what you've done in the past week, kind of chunking it up for them? And then have students complete assessments that are very similar to the practice that they do in class. So we in English 9 for the past year have had students do Flipgrid assignments every week to work on their speaking and presentation skills. One of the things that we decided to do, my colleagues and I, was consider what that end assessment would look like. If we've been having them do Flipgrids, we have trimesters for 11 weeks, why not make that summative assessment the same process that they've done the whole time? So that 12th Flipgrid that they do for the trimester is exactly the same process, just a different prompt like they would have every week anyway, and have them do that same Flipgrid, but count it in that summative assessment category. So if you can keep kind of those processes and those routines in place for the students, that also helps them so that they can do and feel more comfortable on the assessment that they're doing. So really quick steps to authentic assessment, taking a look at identifying the standard or the learning target that you want the students to master. What's that one thing that you want them to be able to show that they can do? In English class for myself, it's not, can you write the whole essay? It's, can you write a thesis? Can you pick out good evidence? Can you analyze that evidence? Can you organize it in a way that makes sense? I know a lot of math teachers take a unit and break it down into the different types of uses of formulas that they have. and then creating a task that would allow them to show their understanding of that standard, and then just creating a rubric so the students know exactly what you're looking for as you are getting to that grading piece of it. So as I was talking about before, kind of the differences between the traditional assessment and the authentic assessment. Traditional assessment, and not that this is obviously what we're doing in our classrooms pre-distance learning, but looking at things that might not fall into that authentic assessment piece. The traditional assessment is really those level 1 questions, that multiple choice, true, false, recall. We love them as teachers because they're easy to grade. You throw them through that Scantron machine, or it's the multiple choice on the Google form or Canvas quiz that is auto graded for us. And then there's really one correct answer for that type of assessment. Whereas when we're looking at the traits of authentic assessment, moving into that level 2 or 3 question area of Costa's questioning, these usually require a short response of some sort, 1 to 2 sentences, or even a longer response. It requires grading on a rubric because there's not one right answer, so there might be that whole range of responses that students can give. And really that rationale and explanation is more important than that one correct answer. These cannot be graded on Scantron's auto grade or anything like that. We've actually had the conversation with my freshmen that I teach quite a bit of traditional assessments, although sometimes they see them as easy because there's that one right answer, it's all multiple choice. We've kind of pushed them into that idea of authentic assessment. Although there might not be that one right answer, no matter where you're sitting in your desk or at your home or in your mind space, you can give a variety of answers and there's not just that one right answer. So although your answer may be correct, your partner's answer might also be correct, even though they're not exactly the same. So like I said, just kind of a quick visual, traditional assessments, multiple choice, answers that are Googleable, which is really where the concern comes in that students can cheat on their tests. Whereas if it's an authentic assessment, it's not something that you're just easily Googling. You really have to think about your answer and rationalize it. Usually authentic assessments require some sort of written response, or they come in the form of a project. So one of the authentic assessment ideas that I had sent out to my staff, to my colleagues, is the idea of why does this matter? So really simple authentic assessment for any content area, no matter if you're English, math, science, or one of the electives. Really easy, especially if you're looking at doing an assessment every week to kind of see where your students are. So test their knowledge of the concept that you covered in the past few days. Ask them to explain the concept and then ask them to explain why it matters to them or their life or in today's society. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use Flipgrid if that's a tool that you're comfortable with, being able to see students' faces and hear their voices as they explain it. You could have them fill out a Google form, so it's all in one simple automated place when they respond to your questions, or you could have them fill out a Google Doc, allowing them more space to type, and then even hyperlinking where they're getting their information from. I think one of the key things as a teacher, we're not there to give them the information, we're really there to help them figure out what resources they can use to find their information and to learn new things. So here are some examples. I'm not going to read them to you, but a couple examples that I got from my colleagues, kind of looking at math examples and then kind of facts or health and then science. Having that student explain what the concept is and then having them kind of take it to that next level. Why does it matter? How does it impact our society today? Why should I know this? And I think having the students answer that question is also great, because then it avoids you as a teacher having to rationalize why this is important to the students. I think we always go back to that question that at least one of our students asks us of, but why do I have to know this? So. And then taking a look at the rubric. Rubrics don't have to be complex. They don't have to be confusing. They don't have to be millions of boxes. You can really look at a simple kind of 3-step rubric. It can be progressing, you can have that understanding piece and that exemplar piece. With that why does it matter assessment that I just shared, I would have a 3-step rubric for this. Progressing is, even if they're finding the definition on Google and they're reading it to you, it seems like they're not quite getting it. The understanding is that they understand that concept, whether or not they Googled it. You can tell that they've processed it a little bit and what that means. And then the exemplar is really being able to make that connection with an outside topic. So I have a couple slides here with authentic assessment examples, sorry, for different subject areas. And then the links actually on the right-hand side, you should have access to. If you don't have access to them, if you request access, I'm sure my colleagues will give you access. They had shared these items with me to be shared out. So these are examples that came from my colleagues who currently teach these subjects and this content. Some of these are things that the teachers have used in the past. Some are activities that they have created since distance learning began. So they gave me an example of what they would normally do pre-authentic assessment being used in their classroom, and then kind of how that viewpoint on assessment has kind of changed the way that they ask their students to show what they know. So one of the pieces, like I said earlier, one of the pieces that I think is important when we're doing professional development is really being able to share ideas, which is why we tried the breakout rooms and we had you do the Mentimeter responses earlier. But if you follow the bit.ly at the bottom, bit.ly/DLMN20, if you follow that, it is going to take you to a Padlet, and we would like you to add to that Padlet what types of authentic assessment are you already using or hoping to use in your classroom. If you've never used a Padlet before, think of it as a virtual corkboard where you would put up your ideas, or a wall where you could put Post-it notes. Really easy to use with students as well as with colleagues. And I'm just gonna see if we can get to the Padlet here for a second. So if you're noticing with the Padlet, I put different categories on the top. As people are adding their notes, you just click on the plus sign right underneath that category, and it'll add a Post-it note for you to add a comment, add an idea, share how you're using authentic assessment, or possibly how you will use it in the future. And you can do this whether you are on YouTube Live or whether you are on our Zoom conference room. If you're watching this at a later date, these Padlets will still be available to you, as will kind of some of the other items throughout the presentation as well. Kevin, are there any questions at this point?
Yeah, I want to go back to a question that somebody asked about the points positive, actually, where they asked, how do you see the points positive method translating to a student's final grade?
Yeah, so that's a little bit trickier. Because of distance learning, we know that students aren't doing all of the assignments. I think if we were in the classroom every day, the points positive would definitely be something where students still need to reach a variety of standards. So if they weren't reaching those standards, there would be a question about whether or not they would pass the class. I think in the end, as you're working with students, you can definitely throw those missings or put in those pieces where they haven't shown you what they know. As a high school teacher, I think I can be fairly frank with my students and direct, letting them know that this information, these zeros, these missings aren't in right now, but there are certain requirements that you would need to show me in order for you to get that passing grade. So if you've only done 2 of the 6 assignments that are in my grade book, depending on what those are and what you can prove to me within those assignments, would depend on kind of the letter grade you would get at the end.
Then another question about authentic assessments is, do you use the EUP rubric during the regular school year, or did you just go to that during distance learning?
Yeah, so I use a 4-point rubric throughout all of my classes. I have for probably the past 10 years. It takes a little bit of time for both students and parents to understand what that means when they see a 2 out of the 4 in the grade book and they think, wow, that was 50%. But in my classroom, a 2 on a rubric out of 4 is, hey, you're right where you need to be. You're in that average category. You've shown me that you know some of the information, but you could really use a little bit more help or a little more time to really master it. So I think it's definitely a positive. I highly suggest that everyone uses a 4-point rubric. I've really had great experiences with it pre-distance learning and post-distance learning, or during distance learning, I guess. It allows the students to see where they're at, and it avoids any possible point grabbing that I know a lot of high school students especially enjoy doing. You're in that category of either you've understood it, you've kind of gotten to a point of proficiency, or you've mastered it, versus the I want my 94% versus my 92%. And just kind of categorizing them in that lump. It's a lot easier to show them how they can move forward versus them just saying, I really should have got that extra point.
We have a couple more questions, but real quick, I'm just going to pass this along because we have to close this room out in about 3 minutes. I put a couple links on there, and I'll put them on there for YouTube Live as well. If you want to share your thoughts on a Flipgrid, I put a link in there where you can do that and kind of continue that conversation. We're also going to continue the conversation in the lounge. So if anybody wants to continue talking about these things and maybe collaborate, come up with some ideas, I put that link in the chat as well. Another question is, do you have any music or choir examples for authentic?
I don't that I have included, but I think a lot of when we're looking at music or choir, my guess is that a lot of what you're already doing is authentic. Having the students show their ability to play a piece of music or sing a specific scale versus just asking them to identify traits of a specific musical genre. Anytime that you're having the students do something versus just pick a multiple choice test, you're moving in the right direction.
How do you show parents' progress or lack thereof when there are no zeros or missing assignments?
So in Infinite Campus, we have the ability to send out messages to parents for missing assignments. So in that case, many of the times I would go through, I would put the missings in so that parents could see which pieces are missing in the gradebook, and then I would actually go through and delete those missings. It is something that is time consuming, definitely, but it's the easiest way that I've found to let parents know that kids are not doing all of their assignments.
Get some great ideas floating around the comment chat here. Another question is, do you think an I for an incomplete is beneficial? Beneficial, it does not affect the grade percentage, but does show up on the grade reports.
So we were actually having this conversation this morning in a meeting during distance learning, if you're talking specifically about that. When it comes to giving students no credit or incompletes, I'm really in the mindset of, would it benefit this student taking in everything that all of our students are experiencing right now? In 12 months from now, would it make sense for the student to repeat this grading period? Taking a look at what they've done the first grading periods, is everyone in kind of the same boat where they're missing these pieces? Or is it something where they're really missing a full gamut of skills that they need, that only would have been strengthened with what they're missing. With that, depending on how your district works grades and incompletes and kids making up credits that they've missed, if there's a possibility where they could just do pieces of remediation versus needing to repeat the whole course, I think it kind of depends on what your district does. So.
I think at this point, we're going to have to close the session to get ready for the next session. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. Again, please feel free to leave a Flipgrid using the link that I put in the chat, or come join the discussion in the lounge just to kind of continue that collaboration and learning. So
Evan, can you try and add the link one more time to the YouTube live chat?
I just did.
Okay, perfect.
So
thanks. Thanks everyone for coming, and we hope to see you again in another session.
Thank you, Trisha.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. What an awesome session. I'm going to go ahead, force close out that room, and keep that learning going. You guys did an awesome job at facilitating today.
Thanks. Good luck with the rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you.